Hello, everybody. Okay, let me launch the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. Hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. Welcome to Module 11, Ethnographic Research. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about ethnographic research. And as you know, ethnographic research is a qualitative type of research, right? And so it's going to require qualitative data collection. As you know, in the first part of class, we reviewed quantitative types of research, and now we're reviewing qualitative types of research. Okay. All right. So qualitative ethnographic research. Okay. What is the definition of ethnographic research? A lot of people call it also ethnography for short, not always calling it ethnographic research. It's the more common use term. And this is the study of the cultural patterns and viewpoints of participants in their natural setting. And what are cultural patterns? Well, cultural patterns essentially is culture that repeats itself over and over again, right? And what is culture? Culture is almost all types of human behavior, right? What is our culture as Americans? Well, we get up in the morning. I would say almost everybody in this class probably gets up in the morning and brushes their teeth in the morning or at night, right? Probably not everybody, but a good portion of you drink a cup of coffee, right? There are certain things that are patterns that you do every day, but not only you, all the people around you, right? That's a culture, right? A culture at the macro level, the whole community, and at the micro level, things that you do each and every day, the cultural patterns. And that's what we're trying to study as ethnographic researcher, those cultural patterns. And it's also from the viewpoint of participants in their natural setting. What is a natural setting? Well, there's really essential in research. There's natural setting and lab setting or non-natural setting, right? Generally, when you go into an office or somewhere for particularly to be like a test subject or to do a survey, that would be an unnatural setting. A natural setting is your home, your local coffee shop, places where you normally feel comfortable and where you actually congregate with your friends, your family. The lake, if you like going to the lake. I know my daughter and I go quite a bit to Millerton these days. She loves Millerton. And so those would be our natural settings. Okay. And so a lot of times when I do a lot of because I do a lot of ethnographic studies here in the Fresno area, generally I tell participants I'd like to interview you either in your home, at a local coffee shop near your house, or really anywhere where you feel comfortable. I try to make sure that they're in their natural setting when we're interviewing and talking about their life or anything like that, things that they're involved with, because I know that comfort level goes a long way, and then being able to open up about the cultural patterns that they practice each and every day. Okay, all right. So that's the definition. Ethnography can be broken up into two words: ethno for people, and graphy to write. Right, we write about people essentially. Right, it's an inquiry about asking questions. It's not as simple as asking questions, but it depends largely on asking questions. There's different ways to ask questions, and that's one of the things we'll talk about in a little bit later. Right, it's about discovering new things you didn't know. Right, it's an exploration and description and confirmation or discovery of relationship among variables. Right, people and their environment and how people interact with their environment. All of those things. And then ethnographers engage in a long-term study of particular phenomenon into meaningful context, right? Oftentimes, ethnography is used when there is no other practical way to understand what respondents are going through. It's kind of like a starting point a lot of times, right? I don't know much about this culture. I'm kind of at the starting point. I want to have some discovery before I really know what about this culture I want to study. A lot of times people use ethnography for those type of studies. Okay, the purpose is to discern patterns and regularities of human behavior and social activity. Discern patterns and regularities of human behavior and social activity. Again, only when you observe and you observe over time are you going to be able to find those patterns and those irregularities or regularities in human behavior. So let me give you an example. So if you're going to observe me for one day, I may be knowing that you're observing me, so I may act differently. That morning, I don't drink coffee because maybe I don't want people to know I drink caffeine, and then maybe that morning I also brush my teeth maybe because I want to be clean and don't want to have bad breath. Things that I may do that aren't natural, that aren't normal. But if you observe me for a whole week, 2 weeks, the longer you observe me, the more those patterns are going to come out because I forget or I even forget to care that you're watching me and observing me. And I revert to my normal human behavior. It happens to everyone. Everyone reverts to the mean in terms of their normal behavior if they're, acting outside of that normal behavior because they're being observed by a researcher. Okay. And also, the purpose is to describe, analyze, interpret the culture, which means attitudes, values, concepts, beliefs, practices of a group over time in terms of the group's shared beliefs, behaviors, and language. Language is also a big part of culture, right? What language do you speak? English, Spanish? Sometimes people speak both. Spanglish, right? Hmong, English. Maybe there's Monglish or something, right? Sometimes people live in different worlds and they bring those languages together, and those may be very unique to that setting, right? Ethnography is also about communities, geographically situated, right? In terms of you're in their communal space where they're more comfortable, right? Uh, there's also problem. It's also problem or topic oriented, right? You're there to observe a problem, to solve a problem, to understand a particular topic, right? So back to this issue of gang members, right? If you're going to be observing gang members, you probably don't want to observe them at the university. You want to be probably downtown or down in their barrio or their hood, wherever they're from. I mean, if you feel that it's safe, of course, you have to feel safe. But that's really where you want to, be observing them. And you're probably there not just to observe blindly. You're there because maybe there's a lot of shootings, or maybe there's a initiation week, or whatever the topic may be. You may be there for a particular reason if you're there, right? It also involves participation in the life of community. It may contribute to issues clarification or to pointing to directions for targeted social change. Okay. Okay, so ethnography versus qualitative research. Even though ethnography is a qualitative research, there are key differences that we want to talk about. And one key difference is, the emphasis on observation in ethnography. Qualitative research doesn't necessarily revolve or focus on observation. You can do qualitative research with interviews, focus groups, right? You can collect qualitative, you can ask questions in email and have them type them out. There's many different ways to collect qualitative data. Ethnography is the only qualitative data that is purely focused on observation. Okay. And the last study I did that used ethnographic research is I wrote a grant I wanted to study, Latino therapeutic methodologies in the Latino community, right? I wanted to see how they were being applied by Latino therapists in those settings. Now, I could have asked them, I could have done a survey, or I could have done an interview with them and tell me how you apply this. Tell me how, your students are experiencing this. Or I could have asked the students too. I could have surveyed them, interviewing them, but nothing was better than to go there while those methodologies were being applied and observe those methodologies. That was key, really, to understanding their application. And I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I designed that study that way. But that was a study that I'm actually still working on. We've been working on that study for about 7 years, and have done countless amounts of observations of Latino methodologies being applied in the Latino community. Also, it's an analysis of actual behavior rather than the stated behavior. That's characterized by immersion into the lives of subjects for hours to years at a time. Right. One of the most influential studies that I read was her name was Donna Daly, and she studied Navajos in Arizona. I read her work when I lived in Arizona. Anyway, she had been. This is not somebody who just popped into the Navajo reservation and did the study. She had been every summer for 15 years living amongst the Navajo. I'm not even sure if she was Navajo, was or wasn't, but after 15 years, she decided to, publish the study of the observation of the culture of the Navajo. And wow, that's why that study to me was, so amazing, because of the amount of time that this person was there observing the Navajo. Doesn't mean you have to do that, right? But you do have to design a study where there is significant amount of observation. The study that I just told you about, the Latino methodology or therapeutic methodologies, uh, we did maybe 15 hours of observation per year for about 5 years was like the core of our data. So that's, you're talking a good number, maybe 70, 80 hours of observation. Okay. All right. The process is you set the clear purpose of the study. You express the approach or rationale for the study. You select the site, right? Back to the gang member study, right? Where site? I mean, obviously you have to be safe, but it has to be in their natural setting. Where are you going to do it, right? Maybe it's on the west side of Fresno. Maybe it's downtown Fresno. Who knows? Wherever it is, right? But definitely your subjects have to be living in that site, right? For the Latino therapeutic methodologies, that's the site there was Sunnyside High School, because that one of our key therapists that applied these methodologies was there, and all the students that were going through this program were there, Sunnyside High School students, and so that was our site. You select a sample, right? How many are you going to select? And it can grow. Sometimes you select a sample and it may grow, and maybe sometimes even get smaller, but you at least have to have planning in terms of how many do you think it's going to take to be able to gather enough data to be able to say something meaningful, right? You gain entry and you negotiate terms for any ethical dilemmas that may come up. The Latino therapeutic study, I mean, obviously I gained entry because I wrote the grant, and that therapist was on board from the very beginning, but I also had to negotiate entry into the school, right? And they let me into the school. They never were able to share the quantitative data that they gathered on the students. But so that was a negotiation, right? What can you share? What can you not share that is ethical, that also, meets sort of HIPAA regulations for the school and that type of thing, right? You establish rapport with the collaborators and the participants, and that means that they have to know you, you have to know them, right? The study that I'm doing right now, it's requiring some observation, but I'm only able to be there the workforce study because we're there. The people that selected those people into that program, they're there with us. They're able to vouch for us, tell them why we're here, and then the people below them, the people that hired me, those are people that created the program, so they're also very well known. Not as well known because they're not there day to day, but they're also well known. And so there's many different layers of rapport. So when it gets down to me, nobody questions really my ethics or even my positionality or even my reason for being there. You collect the data. You also obviously need an instrument for ethnographic data collection. An instrument could be as simple as, you write down 5 or 6 things that you're looking for, right? When I'm collecting the Latino therapeutic methodologies data, it's a one sheet, really just a 1-page instrument. And there's only like 3 key questions on there. I mean, I collect a lot of the demographic data, like how many students am I observing? What's the date? How many students that are Latino? How many are not? What time of the day is it? That type of thing. How long was the observation? Those type of quantitative stuff that I collect, but I also collect where did you see? How was that methodology being applied? Right? What was the insight? They explain thoroughly how that was applied, right? And I can explain, okay, it was applied in such way, the therapist, went into a mindfulness activity. He opened it up for deliberation. The students filled out another survey in terms of how that impacted them. The students talked about how these mindfulness sessions really impacted their academic performance on exams. All of these things that I'm recording as I'm seeing them. And then you analyze the data, right? You got probably at that point a lot of field notes, maybe 20, 30, 100. Donna Daly that I told you about, the Navajo study, probably had, a couple of thousand pages of observations by that point, right? You interpret the data. What does it mean? Right? What does it mean? Was it successful? What did you learn about the culture? What does that mean in the larger context of maybe American culture or Native American culture or school culture, those type of things. That's part of the analysis and the interpretation. And you write up the ethnographic account. You have a lot of responsibility writing up that ethnographic account, because you have to truly your responsibility is to represent the voices of those people who allow you to observe them, represent their voices, and be able to tell their voices the best possible way. Mhm. Key characteristics of ethnographic research. It's, again, as I said, you got to be in their natural setting, right? You can't bring them over to the university. Come over to the university for me to observe you. No, you got to go to the natural setting. It's intimate face-to-face interaction. There's accurate reflection of participant perspectives and behaviors. Data collection is mostly through field work. Field work just really essentially means you're in the field. You're in the natural setting, okay? You're collecting notes, you're writing notes, okay? You utilize multiple data sources of qualitative and quantitative if you need to, right? This is one study where, it was a qualitative study. It required some ethnographic work, but really it also required a lot of qualitative research interviews. I had to go to the natural setting and interview people. The study that I did, and it also required, surveys with those participants. I had about 20 participants that had committed crimes in the Fresno area. I had to interview them to find out if they had, they went through a program of rehabilitation. I had to find out if there was any remorse in terms of, how they felt after going through that program, those type of things. And then there's analytic strategies to build the local cultural theories. You're framing behavior and action in the social, political, and historical context, right? What you're observing, what you're finding, what does that mean? Social, political, historical. Right now, if you're doing any study on, farm workers or undocumented workers, yeah, there's going to be definitely a political lens and a social political lens, right? Because of what's happening with Trump and all the, mass deportations, all of that. And what does that mean historically? This isn't the first time we've had mass deportations. We also had them like in the 50s and I think in the 60s and the 70s, right? This isn't the first time, right? And this isn't the most that has been. Hasn't been the most extreme either, right? And then also using the concept of culture as a lens through which to interpret your results. Okay. Key characteristics: also placing emphasis on exploring the nature of a particular social phenomenon, investigating a small number of cases. You don't want to do 100 students if you have to observe them. You want to do a small number, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 8. That's how you want to design a study, that it's an ethnographic study, small number of cases. The data analysis also involves interpretation of the meaning through thematic description. What does that mean? Is that you may have 50 different findings, but all of those may be around a certain theme. So maybe like the gang studies that we've done with some of our colleagues they come out of sociology, they come out of social justice, that study gangs, right? You study gangs, okay, yeah, they may be involved in shootings, they may be involved in carjackings, they may be involved in those type of things. Is there a theme for that behavior? That may be under the theme of misbehavior, right? Or there may be a lot of different things that they do at the school setting, right? Within school, right? Those may be themed under school misbehavior, right? And so there may be many different ways to really thematically organize those findings, okay? Also offers a reflection of people's life that is from the lens of the researcher, but they're the experience of the participant, and it's not presented through the authoritative experiences of people. Okay, types of ethnographic research. As we talked earlier about the different types that we're studying here, these are some of the key types. Okay, realistic ethnography is an objective, scientific written ethnography Rarely do you interact with the participants. You're objective. You're really detached. You're maybe like a fly on the wall type of thing. Confessional ethnography is a report of the ethnographic's fieldwork experience, right? That's not about the participants. That's about your experience. How was it being in the field? How was it, if say like the gang member study, how was it when you were taking, notes and when you were observing? How was that experience with you? Did you feel safe? Did you feel that you were learning? How was your experience? And then you have life history. This is a study of one individual situated within the cultural context of his or her life. So this is not many participants. This is one participant. And this is where you study where you have unique people like a US president or, a student body president, or where you have these very unique life stories. This is where you have an N of one. Okay. Then you have autoethnography, as I talked about earlier. I've done many autoethnographies where you self-interview or you study yourself for a given amount of time, collect a certain amount of data about yourself, maybe as a researcher, maybe as as a person of color in a non-diverse setting, whatever the case may be. Microethnographies are a study focused on a specific aspect or a cultural group and a setting. Ethnographic case study is a case analysis of a person, event, activity, or process set within a cultural perspective. So the ethnographic case study is more like a macro analysis, and the microethnography is more like a micro analysis, right? You got the macro and the micro. You got critical ethnography. This is a study of the shared patterns of a marginalized group with the aims of advocacy. So if you were going to study farm workers and talk about the unfairness that they're going through or the injustice that they're going through with these mass deportations of farm worker communities, you're not trying to really be a passive observer. You're not trying to be disconnected from that study. You're trying to actually be sort of more like an advocate, more like you have a more of an insider point of view, that you have a perspective. You got to tell people what your perspective is. Your perspective may be that you don't agree with mass deportation, period, right? Feminist ethnography is a study of women and the cultural practices that serve to disempower and oppress them. It still happens nowadays. Okay. Postmodern ethnography, an ethnography written to challenge the problems of our society that have emerged from a modern emphasis on progress and marginalizing individuals. Right now, the big sort of oppressive mechanisms are AI, or liberating mechanisms, depends on the point of view, right? If you lose your job or you can't get a job because they're hiring robots or they're hiring AI, then that might be oppressive to you. But if it's helping you do your work and it's helping you be more productive, and you may get a pay raise because you're more productive using chatbots, then maybe that's a good thing, right? Depends on the perspective. Then you have ethnographic novels, which is a fictional work that is focused on the cultural aspects of the group. Okay, so triangulation. I think we talked earlier about triangulation. In ethnographic studies, it's very important. Triangulation is collecting multiple types of data to assure that they all are telling you the same story, making sure you're capturing the right story. So qualitative researchers believe that researchers should not rely on one single source of data, whether it be an interview, observation, or whatever. The strength is really in a multi-instrument approach. You want to collect maybe not only observations. The study that I did on Latino therapeutic methodologies, I did observations, I did parent surveys, I did interviews, I did focus groups, I did student surveys. I mean, I collected so many different types of data to be able to achieve that high level of triangulation. So it is also a primary way that researchers ensure the trustworthiness of their study. And the word trustworthiness is important. This really means that people have a lot of faith in your study and what you found and how you did it. Also, the use of multiple methods, data collection strategies, and sources are key. It also allows ethnographic researchers to get a more complete picture of the topic under study and to cross-check information. So if you're doing maybe a study that only involves 5 or 6 people, right? Say the Navajo, say Donna Daly studying the Navajos. Okay, she may just want to be in there studying Navajo chiefs. Maybe there's only like 10 or 15 chiefs, right? But she still wants to know how the policies of the chiefs are impacting everyday Navajo. So she may also do a survey to make sure that what the Navajo leaders are telling her coincides with what the average Navajo citizen is telling her. Okay. Why observe? Why do observations? Why do ethnography? Collect different types of data, different kinds. You reduce the problem of reactivity, right? Where you're not understanding a particular culture and not understanding something that may be causing problems within the culture and how to correct those problems. It helps you formulate sensible questions. It provides an in-depth understanding. Many research problems also can't be addressed any other way than through ethnographic research. It's key. Like the one I told you about, the Latino therapeutic methodologies, the only way to really truly understand how they were being applied was really to observe. There really, essentially, there was no other way. You have access to information that is not widely available. Maybe nobody has had that information, like Donna Daly's Navajo study. That was the first really to get that sort of in-depth look at Navajo culture. People had written about the Navajos, but it wasn't from the point of view of the Navajos. Okay. It also allows for the establishment of good relationships. It enhances understanding of the setting or the context. Questions can be asked as appropriate ways in the local terminology. What type of terminology is used? How is it used in that particular culture? Data triangulation, you compare accounts, statements of ideal behaviors, and observed actions. There we go. That was written. I did live in England. That's the way the English spell it, but I didn't live in England when I made that typo there. Okay, all right, and also allows questions to be asked on a continual basis to be able to continue to learn and to expand your learning of that particular culture and that particular cultural setting. Primary data collection, right? This is from the most important to the least, or right? Participant observations. Observation is key to ethnography. Field notes, the notes that you take are key, right? That's actually you're usually taking field notes on the observations. Interviews, examination of artifacts. What are artifacts? Pictures, journals, any different thing, all the different things that are going to help explain that story. Okay. So how do you observe? Different types of observation. Okay, first of all, the method is participant observation, because you're observer, but you're also sort of a participant. You're in that natural setting. You learn to see, describe, and remember, and to become aware of what you're seeing. As you're involved in what you're seeing, you participate in everyday life. You conduct detailed observations. You take field notes. You make direct observations of events that may be unique to understanding the larger culture. You spend extended periods of time living in the community, learning the language, understanding life, customs. Of course, when I did the Latino therapeutic study, I couldn't live in Sunnyside High School. So I used to go every day to do observations. I also went home every day at the end of the day, right? The role of the research is also known to the community. They know why you're there. They know your purpose, and they know what you're seeing. Then you have active participant observer. This depends on the type of research that you choose to investigate. You're likely to have opportunities to be an active participant. So say you're like in a high school and they're teaching, algebra that day, and maybe the teacher is teaching something that she doesn't have a lot of experience teaching, because after all, maybe the teacher didn't study math, right? But there she is, a math teacher, and you may have a degree in math, and she knows that or he knows that, and they ask you if you could please give the lesson for the day, even though you're really there to do your research. That would be more like an active participant observer, right? Where you're involved, or you're in a culture, you're in the Navajo reservation, like Donna Daly. She's not there just on the corner taking notes. She's living the life of a Navajo. She's cooking with them, she's cleaning with them, she's doing ceremonies with them, all of those different things. And you share what you know as you're also investigating. You're usually a person that comes with knowledge that doesn't exist in that community. You share that knowledge if you can, when and if there is an opportunity to share your knowledge. You're not just a researcher, you're also a participant. Then you have the privileged active observer, right, where you can move in and out of the roles from participant observer to, more active to passive observer. You may work in the setting, but you're also researching the setting. So you move in and out from being active observer to passive observer. Okay. Passive observer, you assume no responsibility. You're focused on data collection. You're hoping to be a fly on the wall, not to be noticed. You're hoping after 2 or 3 days they won't even notice that you're there, right? I had a study one time the one I told you about, the Latino therapeutic methodologies, where this wasn't Sunnyside High School. These were some continuation schools where we had therapists also applying those same methodologies. I was there observing, and what I observed was really harsh. There was some bullying going on. There was one student explaining to the other, "You're in this school, when somebody looks at you wrong, you have to fight. Otherwise, these people are gonna, not think good of you." And the student did not want to fight, and the student was saying, "You have to if you're going to be in this school." And I had to really, I don't know if it was the right thing to do. I had to go from, I just wanted to be a passive observer. I had to become an active observer and say, "Hey, listen, this is my perspective on that." And I obviously, wouldn't be in favor of, this student insisting that this other student has to fight. Okay. All right. So guidelines for participant observations: you got to get entry into the site, right? Who's going to give you entry? Do you already have entry? Right? How did Donna Daly get entry into the Navajo reservation? I'm sure she probably knew people. She probably knew some of the chiefs, or maybe she was even a Navajo, right? How did I gain entry into, a lot of the different sites that I've been? Well, probably knew somebody. Somebody was able to vouch for me, and I was able to maintain rapport, right? Reciprocity, right? They give you entry, and you may be asked to give, time for a lecture or help out. How are you going to give back, right? I remember the first time that I was asked for reciprocity when I went to Spain. I lived in Spain for a year, and I came back with hundreds of pictures, and I wanted to. Then I was in an educational administration course. I was interviewing some vice principals about, being leaders in those schools, and they had known that I had just got back from Spain, and they asked if I would do a presentation of life in Spain and that type of thing. And so, but yeah, I was able to do that and give back. There was reciprocity for them doing interviews with me. Okay. And there's also a tolerance for ambiguity. Not everything, not every day is the same thing. You'll need, not every day something's happening. I'm sorry, right? You're going to need some patience, and you're going to need to say, you just need to be patient. If something's going to happen, you just have to be patient. A personal determination is coupled with faith in oneself. If you experience culture shock, just write about it. Hang out there. It makes sense over time. We're getting ready to host an international student from Spain, and I'm going to have him journal. He's going to be here for a year. I'm going to have him journal his experience, have at least one journal entry per day. And ultimately, I think everything's telling me, all the videos I'm watching, that he may experience culture shock living here in American society. And so I want to be able to catch that and be able to help him and talk him through some of that if I can through his journaling. So, also letting go of control, right? Don't think that you're going to control everything. Have a plan for when, and there you'll collect field notes, but be willing to abandon the plan and go with the flow. Sometimes you can't observe. You're asked to do something else. You got to be open to those type of things. Okay, field notes. Don't leave the observation continuously if you're a participant in it to write. Don't leave the observation continuously. You may miss some aspects of the event. You may have to come back and fill in sort of gaps. Wait until there's an event. Write your notes of the event from head notes, right? Remember something. Don't think, well, I can't participate. I got to go write my notes. Remember what was happening, participate, and then come back and write your notes later. If you let participants know that you're jotting field notes after a while, they'll just accept it as normal. This is the researcher. He's always in his notebook writing notes. You write field notes chronologically from what happened at the beginning of the day to what happened at the end of the day. You avoid the temptation of trying to recreate the dialogue. Okay, don't try to recreate the dialogue. If you can, if there was a quote or a saying that day that was key, try to remember that as clear as possible to write it down, but it may not ever be exactly the same as you saw it. Okay, and be okay with that. Add sufficient detail and avoid being too well. Key questions to answer in your field notes, right? What was the physical setting? What was the physical setting where behavior took place? What did the physical space look like? How did participants being observed act? What was said? What interactions took place? You might have more, but this is the basic. Okay. Look at the environment with open eyes. Ethnographers are encouraged to make observations without looking for anything in particular, without having preconceived notions or biases. Often unexpected bumps and contradictions will emerge in the environment being observed. Okay, risks and difficulties in fieldwork. Community entry may take a long time. It may not be easy, right? For me to get into Sunnyside High School took probably over a month of working with our therapists, of working with the administrators, right? Sometimes it may take a while. And so if you're doing a study for a project and you only have a semester, you need to be really careful. Okay. There may also be tensions between the groups and individuals that may affect data collection. Observations may change the usual behavior. Researcher may provoke greater than usual reflection and analysis, right? Because you're there, they feel that they may have to act a certain way. The researcher, the host community may experience difficulty clarifying the roles of the researcher. Again, are you an active participant? Are you a passive participant? Right? It may be one day, another the next day sometimes. Observations and participation will always be selective and partial, and you can only be in one place at one time. It's difficult to generalize on the basis of a case study. And generally, again, in qualitative research, you don't want to generalize. Generalization is not the purpose of qualitative research. Transferability is the purpose. Generalization is the purpose of quantitative research. Okay. And the approach cannot be used for larger populations. You generally need smaller populations. If you want to study larger populations, then you need to do a quantitative method. At the very end, after you collect data, you have to analyze it and interpret it. You have to write an account of your experience. You have to look for themes in the data, right? There's 30, 50 findings. Are they themes? Is there any way that they come together under a theme? You have to include social, cultural, and economic impact of the findings, describe if there were any limitations, and then also provide recommendations for future study. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you next week.